Good morning, class. This is week 5, and today you get to see my face. You get to put a voice to a face. Um, so I just wanted to talk with you a little bit about adolescence. We're going to talk about the transition from adolescence into adulthood. Some of you might have some people in your home going through these transitions right now, or have family members or friends who have kids, or work with this age group, which God bless you if that's you. So you are aware of these things and are exposed to them on a regular basis. Adolescence is a very trying time for a lot of reasons. There's so much going on in a person's body. So we have the physical components that are outside of person's control, right? Like hormonal things. We have just developmental things. They're growing, their bodies are changing. These are all things that are just natural things that happen to a person when they get to be around the adolescent age. So they can be more tired, they need more rest, yet, the social components cause them to maybe not do those things or fight against those things, right? Um, Typically, teens are when we say the word egocentric, it means they're about themselves. I have a lot of parents who come in here into my office, and they are wanting their kids to be happy about doing things like chores or spending time with them. And not to say that that can't be a reality for some teens, but for a lot of teens, their world is surrounded by themselves, and that's what they care about most. So for them to be happy about vacuuming or happy about playing a family game may not be a reality. And that's to me okay. Um, it's okay in the sense of like, I just want you to do it. So whether you vacuum because you're happy about it or you vacuum because I told you, the bottom line is that you're vacuuming, right? That's my stance on it. So I try to encourage parents, to not take it personal. It's not personal. Like I want them for a second to think back to when they were 15 years old or 16 years old and think about what was important to them. And usually it's not trying to make your parents happy, usually. And you may want to make them happy, but it may not be still doing chores, and some parents tend to take it personal. So again, they are typically in their own world about themselves. Um, so what helps form a teenager's identity? So parents, how they were raised, expectations that are put on them, peers, close friends, social networking, social context. There can be some sort of limitations based upon financial resources, what they can do, can't do. Personality shapes them. So these are some of the things. I think in our culture today, cell phones, man, they are the worst thing ever. um, I say that as I have a cell phone and I very much am part of social networking. Um, However, I think the pressure that's put on teens, the rate of suicide that has gone up since um, social networking has become prevalent in kids as young as 10, 11, 12. It's just amazing to see how much our culture has shifted and how much has changed for young people. The need for the loneliness factors, depression, all those kinds of things have been on the rise. And I think the one contributing factor is the phone, right? Back in the day, if you can remember, when your friends were all doing something, maybe without you, you didn't know because you called on a home line and you did, maybe nobody answered, but that didn't necessarily mean everyone was together. Now kids have their friends on location. And some of you may chuckle because this is true. They have their friends on location and they can literally look on a map and see everyone's at the same spot and they're not. One, that's very codependent, and two, that's problematic. People look at the lives of celebrities on Instagram or on all these different, Snapchat or whatever, and they think, wow, I wish I could be that way. What's wrong with me that my life's not like that? What I want that and I can't have that. There's just all this emptiness that comes from comparison. A lot of social media people put out there like stuff that isn't necessarily real, like how many times did they have to change the image in order to make it perfect for this one post. But that's so much about what kids are into, and I think it's caused a lot of problems, and it shapes how kids are and how they behave. It's very problematic. Very, very problematic. It affects, and I don't necessarily like the word self-esteem, but it affects their self-worth. It affects how they see themselves, how they view the world, how they want to be. It's just, it can be very, very problematic and cause, a lot of stress. And it's stress that's unwarranted, not needed, not needed at all. I'll explain to my minors that I see. I just want to get to this. Yeah. I'll explain to my minors that I see that, back in the day when I, was your age, I had to like memorize my friends' numbers and I would have to like call them. And we had something called an answering machine and we would leave a voice, like a message if they weren't home. Like I couldn't get in contact with people 24/7. And a lot of people think that's normal. Like they'll be upset when people don't respond to them immediately because they're like, well, I know they were on the IG. I know they were on the gram. And it's like, okay, yes, but like maybe somebody doesn't want to give you a play by play of their life. And that should be okay, right? And this is all very confusing. To me, it causes these issues in adult relationships, right? Because people expect people to be like at their beck and call, respond to me. I know you have your phone on you, respond, respond, respond. And it's like, we didn't do this, 10, 15 years ago. I didn't get a cell phone until college and I hardly used it because we had to pay for, what was it called when when you were out of area, roaming fees, and text messages were 10 cents a message. Like we didn't do that, and so much has changed rapidly, right? Our culture has shifted so much just used to the cell phone. My first grader is asking for a cell phone. No, does he want a cell phone to talk? No, he wants a cell phone to play games. And I'm like, no, like you're gonna get a walkie-talkie, man. That's our joke. But like seriously, I tell him, I'm gonna save you a lot of heartache and a lot of problems by you not having a phone. So, um, so romantic relationships are something that happens at this stage, right? And adolescents, they fall in love very quickly, potentially. Um, they have the same, usually, level of interest, maybe the same status as far as like popularity, whatever that means, right? They might have like mutual things that they do together. There's some level of attractiveness, right? And again, this is something that happens, and parents, I think parents need to talk to their teens or even before teenage years, because puberty happens, as young as 10 sometimes, right? I think parents need to talk to their kids very early about maybe not all the nitty gritty of sex, but talk to them about their bodies, talk to them appropriate language of what body parts are called, because kids start talking about things at school, and who would you rather your kid learn from? Their peer or from you? I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's awkward. There's a lot of great books out there that you could have your kid read and you do it together. But by no means do you want your kid to learn about these things from their peers. By no means. So I encourage like as you guys become clinicians and you work with kids and you work with parents to talk to them about this stuff, right? Because just telling them to not have sex is not going to solve any problems. It says here that 2/3 of U.S. teens will have had intercourse by the end of high school. That's a big number. There's peer pressure, alcohol is involved. Now you got, different kinds of drugs that can be involved. Boys tend to see sex as recreational. Girls tend to view it as an expression of love and romance. I would say that's true, but I think a lot of things are changing even for young women. Girls can be aggressive nowadays. Sending, nudes, things of that nature. If you don't know what a nude is, that's when you send an inappropriate picture. Girls can be very forward, and so and girls can want to just have hookups. It's not just boys, and so kids are experimenting with these things very young, having multiple partners, and that's very scary, right? Because we know that there's problems and long-term effects of making those kinds of decisions. Approximately 1 in 6 American teen girls that have had intercourse become pregnant. 10% of sexually active teens do not use contraception, which is crazy. Especially with how readily available contraception can be. How can teenage sexual behavior and pregnancy be reduced? Well, obviously, by not having sex, right? But if we can't control that, It's trying to teach them what safe sex is, how to get pregnant. I mean, that sounds really maybe dumb to some of you, but a lot of young people don't know these things and they're uneducated in regards to this, and they make really false assumptions about things, and then um, it creates problems because they are unaware of how their bodies work, and unaware of how things happen, and don't realize how they can get pregnant. And that's where knowledge is power. I feel like the right knowledge is always powerful and can be used to a person's advantage. Always. Um, Alcohol is a big thing, you know, especially when you get into the high school years. It can be part of their social, you know, parties or weekend things. Um, Parents sometimes allow kids, well, at least if it's happening in my house, I feel like I'm in control. Um, I don't know if that's really true, right? And that creates problems because we're allowing something that's not allowed, and then you have the drinking and the driving factors, and there's a lot of problems, right? Um, and kids can become alcoholics at a young age. Kids can become drug addicts. I know of a 15-year-old hooked on heroin, you know, and now he's 21, so doesn't have a GED. You know, these are very real things, very real things. 1/3 of teens experiment with smoking cigarettes, and I don't know if this stat is accurate with now all the e-smoking and vaping and all these kinds of things. Um, so parents educating, being supportive of kids not smoking. Peers who smoke might cause a kid to smoke more. Um, and then there's obviously school-based programs that help kids to not smoke. Marijuana. Marijuana is everywhere now, right? And now there's, you know, legal rules and limitations, you know. However, that doesn't mean that kids aren't even, you know, using a vape pen and using marijuana in class while the teacher has their back turned. Like, that's how evident it is. You have edibles, you have all kinds of things. And these are things you need to talk to your kids about, because a kid could be very naive to not even knowing what someone's giving them, you know? And you know, marijuana is a downer. So if someone's struggling with depression, you know, they're using alcohol, you could have major issues with depression. Um, 15% of adolescents are depressed, and it's more common in women. But again, depression can be triggered by things, life situations, disappointments, social media, I feel like. Um, there's a lot of things that can cause a person to be depressed. Um, but that's where it's important for parents to be in communication with their kids, talking to them. If they're noticing something different, they're withdrawing to their room, they're not acting like themselves, they've been more moody, you know, that's when you ask questions, you pay attention. You start noticing things that might be off. When they talk to this person, they start to act different, you know, because something could be going on and they just may not know how to communicate that with you. Um, so adulthood, right? Transitioning. I think, you know, we have certain rites of passage. I think graduation's a rite of passage. So I encourage you, once you graduate the master's program, to walk, just because that's a rite of passage. It's a way of proving to yourself that something's happened. We call these rites of passage, like, as a way of kind of helping, like a marriage, like a ceremony is a way of knowing you're married, you know? A graduation is a way of knowing you graduate. A funeral is a way of processing death. Like, these are things that happen as a way to mark an event, and then you move forward from it, right? Um, so, you know, so sometimes in culture we have, you know, rites of passage as adult. Like certain cultures, they have a very distinct thing from when a boy becomes a man, you know, or a woman becomes a girl becomes a woman. In our culture, there's not so much of those things. You know, we have 18, you're an adult. But how many 18-year-olds nowadays are adults, are independent, are aware of how to do things, right? Nearly 70% of U.S. high school graduates go straight to college, right? Um, then they come back home a lot of times. And we call, you know, we joke about things like failure to launch, but we have a lot of grown adults who live in their parents' houses and get fully taken care of while they're trying to navigate what's next. Um, and this can be problematic, right? Because we're almost putting off adulthood. We even have, you know, young people can be on their parents' health insurance till 26. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, but you know, when we talk about independence and things, it's hard, it's expensive. People can't, they get a college education, they can't find a job. These are all these things that can be very complicated and make it hard to transition into that independent living after college. And I think sometimes young people, especially millennials, they have this ideology that I should be able to graduate and have everything my parents have, and if I don't have that, then I'm disappointed or upset. And it's like, well, that's nice, but how long did it take your parents to get what they have? Sometimes we have to start off the bottom in order to work our way up, and that's a hard thing for people to understand. Very, anyways, that can be, that's a whole other topic. Um, Again, financial independence. I think learning financial strategies comes even in adolescence, teaching kids how to use money, how it works. If you spend it, you don't have it, how to save, giving them some of that leeway. Dave Ramsey's all about it, but so that when they get old, they know how to budget, they know how to take care of themselves. These are things that young people don't necessarily know intrinsically on their own. Um, but if when it's taught to them right, they have more awareness, right? So here's a little tidbit of information. We're on week 5, so we're over halfway done. Just so you guys know, week 8 we will not have a discussion board, okay? Because you guys will have your final and all those kinds of things. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. I hope you guys have a great week. This is a little bit of a shorter lecture, but I look forward to hearing from you and reading all your papers that I'm going to be grading, and continuing to look at your discussion boards. Thank you.